Welcome to the Highland Ridge Community Church of Lowell, Ohio. Today, Pastor Kevin Lauer brings the Easter message, Do You Believe? All right. So, if you'll turn in your pew Bibles to page 1584. Our scripture is from Mark chapter 16, verses 1 through 20. Okay, we're going to start with verses 1 through 8. Mark 16, 1 through 8. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "We are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go and tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. So this morning we have good news. Jesus is alive. He has risen, just as he predicted. And because he lives, we too can live. So what do you think of this news? What is your response? What do you call somebody who believes 12.5% of everything the Bible says? An atheist. So let's not be atheists. Let's be 100% theists. All right. Well, let's look once again at how his followers responded back then. We just read where Mary Magdalene, out of whom Jesus had driven 7 demons, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and Salome the mother of James and John, and the wife of Zebedee, were going to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body with spices. But when they got there, he was gone, and in his place an angel who told them that he had risen. And what was their response? Matthew 28 verse 8 says that they were afraid, yet filled with joy. Then they ran to tell his disciples. Then in verse 9, Jesus met them on the way, and they ran to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Matthew 28, where Matthew tells the version of this same story, also tells about the guards at the tomb. Before the women got there, there was a violent earthquake as the angel came down from heaven, rolled back a stone, and sat on it. And verse 4 says that they were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. So that's a funny picture when we think about it. The women were scared, but these big bad guards were so scared that they passed out. Now verse 11 says that after they awoke, and while the women were on their way to tell the disciples, the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. So here we have 2 very similar reactions. The women and the guards were all afraid, and they all went and told what happened. But the first difference is that the women were also filled with joy. The guards were just scared. So let's look at how the chief priests responded. Matthew 28 verse 12 says, when the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say, his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed. And it says, this story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day. And not only just back then, but this theory is still believed today by skeptics. So the chief priest's response was to pay off the guards and to lie about what had happened, and start a conspiracy theory so that they could maintain their power over the Jews. And the guards went along with it. That was the second difference. While the women stuck to their story, the guards accepted the bribe and changed theirs. So now let's go back to our main text in Mark 16 and pick up where we left off with verse 9. Again, this is on page 1585 in the Pew Bible. Picking up with Mark 16, verse 9. When Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had driven 7 demons. He went and told those who had been with him, and those who were mourning and weeping. When they heard that Jesus was alive, and that she had seen him, they did not believe it. Afterwards, Jesus appeared in a different form to 2 of them while they were walking in the country. These returned and reported it to the rest, but they did not believe them either. So, where it says in verse 13, verse 12, that he appeared to 2 of them while they were walking in the country. This is likely a reference to the story of the men on the road to Emmaus, as told in Luke's account. And we'll get to that in a minute. But it continues, these returned and reported it to the rest, but they did not believe them either. So the women and the guards all believed. And apparently the chief priests and the elders believed it too. Otherwise, they would have surely thrown the guards into prison for sleeping on the job. But the disciples of all people doubted and refused to believe. Isn't that ironic, Sister Saints? Jesus' enemies and the women who were considered by their society to be inferior all believed before Jesus' own disciples accepted it. In their defense, they had not witnessed it with their own eyes, but they should have believed. After all the time that they spent with him, and he explained it to them over and over again. But then again, like I pointed out last week, John 12:16 says that the disciples did not understand Jesus' teachings about his mission until after he was glorified. And then they understood. So as it continues in Mark 16, verse 14, later Jesus appeared to the 11 as they were eating. He rebuked them for their lack of faith and their stubborn refusal to believe those who had seen him after he had risen. So he went on to give them the Great Commission, not only to believe, but to follow the women's example and to go share the good news. That's in verse 15. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, he says, but whoever does not believe will be condemned. So verse 20 says, the disciples went out and preached everywhere, and the Lord worked with them and confirmed his word by the signs that accompanied it. So the disciples did eventually get there. It just took them a little bit longer. And Acts 4:33 says that with great power the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus. And God's grace was powerfully at work in them all. John 20 tells us that Simon Peter and John were the first 2 disciples that Mary Magdalene had told that the tomb was empty. John says that when he went inside the tomb, he saw and believed, even though they still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. So John believed, although he did not yet understand. Next we come to Thomas, also known as Didymus, who was not with the disciples when Jesus first appeared to them. So it says in John 20, verse 25, the other disciples told him, we have seen the Lord. But he said unto them, unless I see the nail marks in his hand and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. And Thomas said to him, my Lord and my God. Then Jesus told him, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Jumping to John 21, it says, afterwards Jesus appeared again to the disciples by the Sea of Galilee. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them, and they said, we go with you. So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. So even though Jesus had told them to preach the good news to the ends of the earth, Simon Peter's response was to go fishing. And so were the other disciples went along with him. So to summarize chapter 21, Jesus told them to get back to work. And notice in verse 3, it says that they did not catch any fish. When we neglect God's call, our worldly efforts are ultimately fruitless. We may find worldly success for a time, but the reward is greater when we follow where Jesus leads. Finally, we find in Luke 24 the details of the 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus. They were disappointed that Jesus had not fulfilled the prophecy that they were expecting. And I spoke about that last week. The prophecy where he would, quote, redeem Israel, as they explained in verse 21. The women had already told them that he had risen, but they still doubted. That's verse 22 to 24. But now they believe that Jesus had just been a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. But it didn't. So Jesus met them on the road, but they didn't recognize him. So he rebuked them first, then he explained to them the prophecies from the scriptures and how it related to him. After they ate together, they finally recognized him and reported back to the disciples. It's true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon and also to them. So let's summarize these seven different responses, different reactions to Jesus' righteousness and grace. Number 1, the women were afraid, yet filled with joy. They worshipped him and ran out to spread the good news. Number 2, the guards were also afraid, but they ran to the chief priests and accepted their bribe to lie about what had happened. Third, the chief priests believed, but still conspired against Jesus and the disciples. Number 4, John. John believed when he saw the empty tomb, even though he still didn't understand. Number 5, Peter. Peter actually believed, but he went back to his old life instead of spreading the word until Jesus returned and set him back on track. Number 6, Thomas. Thomas believed, but only after he could see with his own eyes. And finally, number 7, Cleopas and the other disciples. They doubted, but their eyes were opened when Jesus appeared to them. So then they worshipped him and spread the good news. So what is our response going to be? Jesus told the women at the tomb, don't be alarmed. Go, he told the disciples, and preach the gospel to all creatures. How about us? Will we, like the Jews, demand a sign? Will we, like the disciples, doubt unless we see proof? Jesus told Thomas in John 20, verse 29, because you have seen me, you have believed. But blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Even though we weren't there to witness it with our own eyes, Jesus does not expect us to have blind faith. And I think that's important for us to recognize. It's okay for us to ask questions. It's okay for us to have moments of doubt. He told us to ask, seek, and knock, and promised that we would find the answers. And he gives us evidence to help us believe, both in the world around us. We talked this morning about beautiful creation, and God has given us beautiful flowers up here. God has given these things. If we look at them and examine them, we realize they have to come from an intelligent and good creator. if we just open up our minds and our eyes to the evidence that the world has around us, it's easy to see. And he also gives us evidence in his word. As it says in John 20, verse 30, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Remember also that the chief priests and the soldiers, they believed. But that wasn't enough. They believed, but they didn't change. They knew the truth, but they didn't accept it. As it says in James 2:19, you believe that there is one God? That's good. But even the demons believe that and tremble. So let's not just believe the truth, but let us also accept it. And our faith will be seen in our actions and in our lives. And as Jesus died for us, let us live for him. As Jesus welcomes us to believe, he also welcomes us to witness to others what he has done for us. And as he welcomes us to the communion table to celebrate his death, burial, and resurrection as we await his return. So we're going to serve communion today, and it's open to all who wish to partake. So let us first examine ourselves as we are taught and prepare our hearts to come before him. Let us pray.
We hope you enjoyed today's message. If you did, be sure to hit the like button. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, be sure to also subscribe so that you'll know when we post new videos. If you'd like to join us in person, we're at the Highland Ridge Community Church at 2200 Highland Ridge Road in Lowell, Ohio. Our church services are Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock a.m. We'd love to see you here. So everybody have a great week, and God bless.